I have come to the conclusion that the world needs a network of encyclopedias, not just one encyclopedia. It should instead be a whole network of encyclopedias.
Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Maxed Up here. We have a very special guest on today. We have the co-founder of Wikipedia and the CIO of Everipedia on today, Larry Sanger. If you're watching from Maxed Up, please like and subscribe. Also the same for the EOSwriter. You'll see us on the feed. But that's awesome. Everipedia secured $30 million from Galaxy Digital, which is an EOS-based fund. Larry has a PhD in philosophy, and he graduated from Reed College. Also, he went to the state of Ohio University. But how are you, sir? Why do you live in Ohio? Why not California or New York?
Well, I got my PhD here, and by that time I had made a number of friends and just got used to living here. And the cost of living is a lot lower. The pace of life is slower. And perhaps I'm not actually that ambitious. I have lived in California a couple of times. I'm actually 100% Californian. My mom and my dad were both born in the LA area.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I still have family out that way. But I can't handle the traffic, and I don't really care for the big city cutthroat.
The highlights, the high life.
Yes, the big city cutthroat competition and so forth. And I like to keep it real, and people from the big city.
Well, isn't Warren Buffett in Ohio as well? Was it Ohio?
Last I heard, Warren Buffett lived in, was it Nebraska?
Oh, right, okay, I've got that wrong.
Somewhere out in the Great Plains, I believe, unless he's moved. Yeah. So maybe it's something similar for him. I don't know.
Yeah, well, California I can imagine it's a whole different place. But just again, thanks for coming on the show. But we'll just crack straight over the questions. So the first questions are quite elementary, but obviously, you've seen Wikipedia grow. What are the main issues with Wikipedia today, and how can blockchain really help alleviate these issues into the future?
One of the biggest problems with Wikipedia is its bias, and there was recently a study done. I believe the news is going to be coming out about it, or a survey, I should say. In which a majority of the people, I forget the precise statistic, surveyed agreed with me that it has a bias and that it shouldn't be. I am one of the originators of the neutrality policy. So I actually articulated the neutrality policy for Nupedia, which is the predecessor of Wikipedia, and then Wikipedia inherited the policy, but it's fallen away from that. And a lot of people, they tend to sit on articles and make Wikipedia articles sort of speak with their own voice, and that bothers me a lot, actually. There's other aspects of it as well. I'm less and less convinced that it is a good idea to try to have a single article that attempts to be all things to all people. I was editing an article on that was sourced from Wikipedia on Everipedia. I think it was yesterday, actually, and about freedom of speech, which is one of the things I am into. So
is that the First Amendment or the Second Amendment or something in America?
Well, that's the interesting thing. There wasn't a mention of the First Amendment in the entire article about the freedom of speech.
Crazy.
There was a mention of UN documents, and there was a mention of the Magna Carta and well, okay, so there was a little bit there, but it wasn't quoted, is what I'm saying. Didn't
sure.
occur in the first section either. But if you're going to ask what are the legal sources that are most discussed, even on a global scale, you would think it would be the First Amendment. There's all kinds of little things like that where lots of little improvements need to be made. And also, Wikipedia, it has a requirement that you, if there's an article to be written about a person, the person must be notable. And if one topic is entirely subsumed under another topic and it just isn't important enough, then it can't have an article of its own. It has to actually be incorporated. Those things bother me. So there's a very old controversy in Wikipedia land between the inclusionists and the exclusionists. So the inclusionists think that there should be articles about as much stuff as people want to write about. And the exclusionists think that no, we should limit ourselves to traditionally encyclopedic topics. Maybe a few more than that, but that's pretty much it.
How does that structure work? Like, sorry to interrupt, but how does that structure work? How did those people get the power within Wikipedia to dictate what is shown on the site?
Mostly by playing games, essentially, on the site, social games, jockeying for position, shoring up their influence among other influencers, and that sort of thing. Yeah, it's a real Lord of the Flies kind of scenario.
Really?
Yeah, and so it's yeah, you don't really want to see how the sausage is made on Wikipedia. It's not pretty.
Interesting as well, yeah. Well, that kind of leads me on. So, like, what's the main? We'll get onto we'll get onto Everipedia in a second. But like, just like vaguely, how do you think blockchain can sort of help this? Because obviously, you said a second ago with there's bias, there's censorship, and all these problems. Like, what are the main little things do you think blockchain can help with?
Well, there's a couple of things. The thing that I think the root problem with Wikipedia, the thing that is probably the cause of many, if not all, of the other problems of Wikipedia is the Wikipedia. It is just a single community, and it's an idiosyncratic community. It's has its own unique and kind of weird policies and procedures and so forth, and they don't appeal to that many people. That's why, even though it's a top 10 website, there's only like maybe 10,000 people who any given month have made enough edits to have the right to vote on administrators.
That's a small amount. Yeah, wow.
That's, I mean, given that there are like hundreds of millions of users, of readers, there'd be at least an order of magnitude or two more than that. I would think that there should be, maybe 1 to 5 million contributors or something like that. That's what you would guess, right? It's not the case. Okay, so the world needs, I think, I have come to the conclusion that the world needs a network of encyclopedias, not just one encyclopedia which dominates everyone else that you have to work with if you want to see your words represented as what is known on the topic in an encyclopedia. You actually have to work with the Wikipedians if you want to do that. It should instead be a whole network of encyclopedias, all working together using a common protocol in the same way that there is a common protocol that all blogs use, that they use to communicate with each other, and that you can use blog readers. So just like there's RSS for blogs, there should be a common protocol for encyclopedias, and that would solve a lot of problems. I won't even go into another idea, which I like to talk about, but I've talked about it on other videos.
Maybe later, But I think it's just really cool how, like, you've built Wikipedia, and it's not like, for you, it's interesting to see how you actually, a lot of people would try and stick to that and not want to change, but it's really interesting how you've had this idea and you're trying to move on to the next thing, and then that brings
principles.
That's what I think is amazing. It's really fascinating to see that. But so that perfectly leads on to my next question. So Everipedia, you know, the CIO. You've recently, well, not recently, is the fundraiser was over a year ago, I think now, but really interesting stuff. So like, what are the key things, just simply again, the key things which Everipedia brings to the table to benefit people who participate in that network, say if it was Wikipedia?
Right. What does Everipedia bring to the table? Well, we are going to, there's a couple of different things. We have got the first major encyclopedia project already on the blockchain. We launched on the blockchain in June. We are committed to being fully decentralized. When we did our airdrop, we didn't do an ICO, we did an airdrop, one of the first big projects to do an airdrop. So over 50% of our circulating tokens are in the hands of
people like me, the EOS token holders.
51% of all of our tokens actually are in the hands.
I was a part of the airdrop. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. EOS holders, right? And that I think is cool. We are building on EOS, which, you know, well, maybe not everyone would agree, but I think that's a big advantage actually. And there's a number of other things, but to shift gears a little bit, from the user experience perspective, we have been developing for the last 6 months or so a new front end. So we're basically redoing the site from scratch. We realized that we had to do that after we moved to the blockchain.
Different world, yeah.
It needs to be made as easy to use as any mainstream website. And we've already gone a long way toward that. You don't actually have to go and buy some EOS, which is difficult, right? I mean, for most people.
Yes, 95% of people, right? Yeah, sure.
So you don't even have to do that. You can just make an account by clicking the social login buttons. If you have to do that, then you can.
Yeah.
So like I use the Twitter login because that's easy, and I don't want to like fire up scatter, which I could do, but it's just a pain in the butt.
Sure.
And then it's going to be when we finally do our launch, which is slated for next month, for April. Could be as late as May. We haven't actually started our larger testing period. Don't know how long that's going to take.
Sure.
But then it's already pretty easy to use. It's going to be, I'd say, 100% easier to use after we do the big push. And I'm very excited about that, because it's going to, I will actually be able to say in good conscience, everybody who is ever disaffected by Wikipedia, who doesn't like it, who thinks that Wikipedia is biased or lightweight or amateur or whatever, you are welcome to come to Everipedia and actually improve Wikipedia articles.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I mean, this is where you can do it. You've been driven off of Wikipedia, you can do it now on Everipedia. And we're not a fly-by-night organization. The co-founder of Wikipedia is working on this, right?
Exactly.
And helping to organize it.
You've got the cavalry.
Yes, and so it's a do-over. That's the way I think of it. And so, you know, you began the interview by thanking me for starting Wikipedia. I hope you will be able to thank me for starting its replacement, basically, in a few years. So we'll see. I mean, look, big new apps often garner a lot more than 10,000 active users, right?
Of course.
We can have more active users on just by getting enough people excited about working on Everipedia than are working on Wikipedia.
Yeah, well, like you said, yeah.
And then what's going to happen? I mean, it's almost like Well, another thing, I compare it to, replacing Facebook with something completely new, like
I'm about to get
Minds
onto that, yeah.
or whatever, right? It can happen. It's just the right configuration of things have to happen, and you have to uh, basically solve the coordination problem.
Yeah,
Basically,
sure.
in other words,
And like you said earlier, with the whole making it as easy as what there already is, then
mhm.
when it's as easy as what is already there, but then you're getting like rewarded for creating articles, and we'll get into that in a second, because like, just to quickly ask one more question, for viewers who say have no idea about Everipedia, like how, the IQ token, right? So the IQ token is a really powerful part of the platform. Is it going to reward? It's going to reward obviously people who create articles, but how is it going to reward the user to take maybe just a little explanation on that would be great.
Sure. So basically, you can, if you're interested in the technical details, you can go to our GitHub repository and just search GitHub for Everipedia white paper. It's basically a three-part, a three-module system. There's the token module, the article module, and the governance module. Okay. The token module contains the rules that basically specify when somebody is awarded with tokens for working on articles and for having edits accepted. And then the article module, obviously, that contains pointers to well, the articles themselves don't live on the blockchain. They live on IPFS, the Interplanetary File System.
Yeah, we love it.
Right. And then the other one is the governance module, and that contains the smart contracts that govern things like, how much people are paid for what kind of edits, and any number of other issues that might come out if somebody has a proposal to make. Basically, that's the module that handles adjudicating that.
Yeah.
So basically, you earn not only something that is of a fungible, tradable value when you write an article, but you also become a co-owner of the network. You become, you actually have a voting right. It actually gives you voting rights. So in somewhat the same way that EOS works. We don't have a constitution or anything like that. I mean, that's something that we might work on. Who knows? Maybe in
down
the next
line, yeah,
or something like that. When it seems appropriate and necessary. I think when we have a much bigger and more active community, then there's going to be more of a need for that. Now, I personally think there's a huge need for that. The fact that Wikipedia doesn't have a constitution is another one of the reasons why it has been so slow to change, because there really isn't a mechanism for a really credible and well operating mechanism for introducing new changes to the system. Yeah, so sure. We're gonna definitely have that. Also have to bear in mind that, again, because it's a blockchain, it's decentralized, it's a network. It isn't just a blockchain backend for Everipedia.org.
Yeah,
we are looking forward to hopefully by the end of this year to supporting with various tools other encyclopedia publishers putting their stuff on the Everipedia network.
Because that's the next step, isn't it? Is getting the content out. And I think I had the Mabob on the show, and he was telling me that you've got a lot of like rappers and like music artists at the moment, and that's like the way to get all the mass adoption. And then what do you think about that?
Well, I respect Mahboud's approach. He's recently left the company. He's now an entrepreneur in residence at Mucker, I understand.
Yeah, sure.
Mucker Capital. we and we're continuing to do that. We're continuing to like in-house make articles from about basically internet celebrities and memes and people's companies and things like that. And that, I mean, I agree, is absolutely important and necessary, and as part of the like long tail of topics that Wikipedia has not covered. But we actually need to get into the meat and potatoes of encyclopedias, or we're never going to get very big.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I mean,
it's really interesting. Yeah, like because like you said, there's only 10,000 people actually actively working within the Wikipedia community.
Yeah.
It's just amazing to see how far Everipedia can go if it decentralizes that sort of incentive mechanism. It's super exciting. And I just wanted to touch on something you mentioned before we started the interview, and that was like about people having their own articles about themselves. And I just wanted to ask you whether you think that's going to be a positive thing or a negative thing into the future.
Right. That's something that we've been talking about. And it's, you know, we have been encouraging people to make articles about themselves, and we will continue to do so.
Almost like a biography, maybe. In the future.
Right. So and to this extent, Everipedia might resemble a social network, except instead of having like a feed of tweets or a page like a personal home page that is interconnected with other people's in a traditional social network, you've got an encyclopedia article about yourself. And maybe it's linked with your friends in various ways. Who knows?
Amazing. Yeah. There's so much which can happen from this.
Yes,
it's very exciting.
And indeed, you'll just wait. You know, in April and May, you're going to see there's all kinds of really neat new features. There's going to be a live chat feature built into every page.
Wow.
It will be easy to follow your friends, and then it'll be easier, I think, to construct that kind of thing. So,
and you're kind of building the social aspect around it, yeah.
On the other hand, I personally am am becoming more and more of a privacy advocate. And if somebody wants to opt out of that and they're not a public figure, you know, like you're just like an accountant or a programmer or, you know, who knows what, then I'm not comfortable with, as it were, forcing a person to have an article about himself. I mean, we still have to figure that out. And
I can understand there's a gray area there.
Those decisions are ultimately going to be dependent on the community, right? So theoretically, somebody could just go and suck up data on millions of people from social network and auto-create articles about everybody and put them on Everipedia. Do I relish that idea? No, I do not. That makes me nervous, that idea. And so we'll definitely be thinking about that and discussing that and make sure that we come up with some responsible policies forward.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, like there's that famous quote which says, you know, history is written by the victor. So like, you know, Wikipedia might have changed that to an extent, but then you're saying that there's issues with censorship on that side. So that isn't really... 7 o'clock. That was my laptop telling me the time. There isn't really like the decentralized aspect there, but then there's probably going to be all these different types of issues we're going to have to come across with your platform, just in the fact that, you know, say there is something which people need to know about someone, do they have the right to take it down, have it up? Like you said, maybe a constitution. So it's like original sin. It's like when something great happens, there's always the issues which come with it. So, you know.
Right. Well, like I say, it is a do-over, and indeed, you know, the whole right to be forgotten is a thing in Europe. And that will be interesting to see how that plays out.
It's going to be super interesting,
yeah.
But I've got so just moving back to what you said something earlier about, biased viewpoints, and, biased viewpoints and people's opinions is like kind of built into human nature. It's something which isn't ever going to go away. And I wouldn't call it a crisis, but, there are issues with fake news, political bias on online social media platforms, like targeting, that kind of stuff. I speak to my dad about it, and we recently had Brexit, which was probably had a big component of like social media political bias in it as well. I don't want to get political with you or anything like that, but I'm just saying, why do you think it's got so much worse in the last, say, 10 years with social media? And whereas Everipedia could sink into this with maybe a decentralized open news network?
I'm not really sure that I think that it has gotten worse, actually.
Okay.
I think that there has been a lot more discussion of it as a problem.
I agree,
I
actually.
think that mainstream media has certainly talked a lot about fake news, especially after Trump's election. Maybe prominent mentions from politicians also.
But you're saying it's more exposed now, right? More exposure to it.
Yeah. But I mean, there has been misinformation for a long time.
Yeah, sure.
I think the only reason why people are bemoaning the fact is that they don't like the certain political events that have happened in the last few years, especially the election of Trump and Brexit.
It's something they can blame that on, but this thing, you're saying this thing's been going on for thousands of years. It's probably worse back in the, let's say, like the medieval times. Probably happened all the time. You're saying that there's someone to point a finger at.
That's right. Well, I mean, but here what we're talking about is something fundamentally different. We are talking about systematic bias in mass media or in social media, which is a kind of mass media. That, again, I think is something that has definitely been out there for, since like the 1990s. I remember all kinds of crap being shared on what was not called social media, but it was basically the social media of the day back, when I was in my 20s. So now there is one big difference, though, right? That is that even though the percentages might not have changed, the fact that people have come together into groups that are larger than they ever were, perhaps, that it's relatively easy to create those groups, even for non-technical people, that actually has changed. That actually is something new as of, like 10, 15 years ago. And people who were not perhaps clued into the nature of the internet from the time that they started getting into it, they now realize that, hey, wow, the internet does have these sorts of problems. But I use the scare quotes around the problems because this is a feature of freedom, basically. There's certainly things that we can do if we are like responsible community managers in managing our own communities, but like regarding it as a social problem that needs a governmental response is actually scarier than the problem itself by far.
Actually, I agree. Government intervention into social media doesn't sound good to me.
Right, and yet there's a lot of talk at very high levels that's been happening recently, and I think it's if anything, getting louder and shriller. We have to do something about these problems, the idea, for example, in Europe, the European Parliament just passed the Digital Copyright Act. I forget what it was called. and so Articles 11 and 13, I understand, of this new directive will basically direct the governments of Europe to basically start charging people for linking to articles from large sources and prevent people.
Really?
Yes, it's absolutely horrific. Actually, it could really ruin the internet, especially in Europe.
It's really interesting you're saying that, because like obviously there's a huge debate at the moment with Europe, because Europe isn't really elected people from each country. It was obviously, we all know what Europe started for. It was a trade union and for peace, just to keep peace. And now it's like a political stocking yard. And that's the reason people voted to leave Europe, I think, was because they didn't want to have laws made in Europe. And now you're saying this, it's not decentralized in any way. It's the people aren't elected at all. So,
no, it puts a lot more power. It basically transfers a lot of power from and freedom, basically, from individual people, just like making videos like this one, for example, and into the hands of basically the big media companies. Which are really the ones who are behind this.
I'm going to look into that 100%, because
it's even worse than just the link tax, as it's called. Another aspect of it is that you have to get permission to use even a quote from a copyrighted source, which would make a lot of the kind of reporting that is done and commentary that is done illegal. But on the other hand, it's vague exactly what the requirements of the directive are. So, who knows? Maybe, Ireland, for example, will not have such stringent requirements as, and they'll be able to argue that they satisfy the spirit of the directive or whatever. But it's
super interesting though.
A lot of people have come out against this, and what's fascinating to me actually is, despite the absolute enormity of the news, I use that word advisedly, it hasn't been discussed that much in the United States, at least in our main news sources, and it's going to affect us too. And I don't know that it's actually had that much. It's made that much of a splash in Europe either. I mean, there were big. Let me start over. You'll have to edit this part. So
no worries.
there were some big protests in Germany, and like tens of thousands of people around Germany, saying "Save the Internet" and so forth.
Yep.
So
it's
anyway,
big, isn't it?
The reason, the relevance to this though is blockchain.
That's it. I was going to bring it back to the blockchain.
Provides a way to allow people to continue the good old ways of sharing ideas via the internet, but via the blockchain now in a way that can't be censored. It's because it's so decentralized. Now the internet itself is decentralized, right? But there's aspects about the blockchain that make it even harder to control. The fact that the same information is shared and repeated in many different nodes, it's harder to shut it down in the way that you can shut down a single server.
Sure,
so,
100%.
It's blockchain to the rescue. I suppose. I hope.
Yeah, well, just this isn't even written down, this question, but do you think like blockchain could fundamentally actually change the way democracy works? Because, you know, democracy a lot of people think it's failed in the UK recently, in recent years, because we voted to leave, but we still haven't actually left yet. So do you think blockchain will have a say on that in the future?
Well, I mean, that's actually ultimately a political question. I mean, there's nothing about what people say and do online that by itself can like work a revolution. It can cause a revolution, but the actual revolution is going to would involve, you know, people going into parliament buildings and taking over the offices and taking over the functions of government, right? And so, yeah, it's not.
It's a pretty big question right there. That's like the biggest one. So
yeah. No, I mean, it's a good question. Obviously, there's a lot that can be said about it. I mean, I've thought a little bit about it, the interface of democracy in general. And
I've tried to think about it as well. Like maybe like instead of having like a central government, which is because obviously you have the people you vote for in your jurisdiction, they go to government. Maybe you could have some kind of way of. It's difficult though. Whenever you come up with a solution, there's always a flaw. So what I was thinking is maybe you had a distributed voting system. Every one key has a one unique user. You distribute the votes on the blockchain so it's more secure. And then you can maybe vote on things where the capital could be allocated. But if it's a cryptocurrency, you know it's going there. So it's like there are so many, like you just said, there's more questions than answers in that today. But there has to be some sort of solution, I think, in the future.
Well, I mean, ever since the internet started getting used a lot and projects like Wikipedia demonstrated the power of crowdsourcing in general, people have been talking about implementing pure democracy or more direct democracy anyway via the internet. I'm not actually a huge fan of direct democracy because most people are idiots.
Yeah, sure.
But and I think most people actually would agree with me too. But
the majority, unfortunately, like that's it.
But that being said, we need to rethink these things for sure, and very seriously. I think society has not yet really come to grips with the whole question of how governance might change now that communications have changed. I mean, ancient Athenians, I know this is nonsensical basically, but if the ancient Athenians had an internet back then, it's pretty easy to see that even though they had a representative democracy, by lot, basically, the people were chosen to be in the jury of 500 that set policies and so forth and made the decisions. Well, you can easily imagine how they would have farmed it out to a lot more people, if not everyone, or at least everyone would have the right to vote, at least, and maybe not everyone would be expected to because, well, everybody's got to work and so forth, and it takes time. And then we have I don't think humanity has any experience of what that would possibly be like and what consequences might be involved with ultimately what the risks are. I mean, we say we hate the idea of pure democracy. By we, I mean myself and many other people, precisely because people are idiots. But on the other hand, has it ever been tried? Not really. So, I mean, it has been on a very small scale, but we're not talking about a small scale now. So
exactly. Well, I like you. It's interesting you say that because, like the Athenians, if they had the internet, it's like it would be such a different world. Like the internet is such a big deal, and it's only been around 20 years since.
That's why I said it was nonsense.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like I always think to myself, imagine if even the Second World War, if there was an internet connection and an internet distributed network, people could communicate. The Second World War probably wouldn't have happened in the first place because of propaganda wouldn't have been as prominent. So I think. like, you're completely right. It's awesome talking to you about it, because like the future we're creating is going to make so much change. It's going to be unreal. I can't wait.
Right.
But a few more questions. We've kind of we went on a bit of a tangent there. We've done like 45 minutes, so we'll do a few more questions. But
Okay.
yeah, so like, social media. Like, let's just get to the bit more philosophical point. So like, do you really think blockchain can revolutionize the world? We've kind of just done that, but like,
so I'm going to say an unpopular thing. I don't know.
We want to hear the answers, Larry. We need the answers.
Yeah. So I like to be a booster of it, because and I have been to a great extent. But if I'm going to be quite honest, then I'll say that I don't actually understand all the ramifications of what's going on.
I think it's a wise statement, to be honest.
Yeah, and the fact that these giant corporations like Samsung and Chase and so forth,
maybe Facebook,
have had, and Facebook are like getting into the blockchain game. That actually gives me pause. And here's another thing, which is also a bit of news from Everipedia. So the technical leadership behind Everipedia have basically tapped a new team of developers to start something called Decentral Bank, and they are developing a bunch of software for central banks to use to release stable coins of their own. We've talked to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and to the IMF, and I don't know who all. I'm not saying we have any deals with them, and I can't make any more announcements or anything like that. But
each central bank has its own coin.
My point in this is to say, wow, now the some of the most you can't get more established than a central bank, more establishment than the central bank.
Yeah, pretty much so, well, don't they?
So blockchain, which on the one hand everybody has been saying is this massive force for liberty, that libertarians love it. It involves decentralization and radical disruption of power centers, is being embraced wholeheartedly by these giant entities. And one of the reasons why I am now less willing to confidently say that there's a revolution in the making is that I hadn't really taken the mainstreaming of blockchain into account, and what ultimately are going to be the effects of basically perhaps some of the biggest and most credible blockchains being in the hands of, well, the usual suspects, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't anything about blockchain in itself that means that it has to be socially decentralized, right? So there's the technology is decentralized in about the same way that the internet is decentralized, and so it's technologically very robustly decentralized. You can even give a technical definition of what you mean by decentralization.
You have to create the consensus algorithm first, so you can create. It can be as decentralized as you want, basically.
Right. But there's other aspects of the system and how it's run that can be as centralized as you like.
Exactly.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens ultimately. I think in general, the world is going to look very different in 10 years to what it looks right now.
Well, talk to family members like my father, for instance, he's like, Max, the internet changed everything. 20 years ago, you weren't even around, like, and now it's social media, all this kind of stuff. So I think, in the next 20 years, what blockchain is going to bring, it's so exciting. I think we've covered so much stuff. It's been awesome talking to you about it, to be honest, because it's so insightful, because obviously you've seen the inception of the internet as well. Like just a off the wing question, like, would you have ever have thought with what the internet would have brought, the things it did?
Yeah, I remember back in the 1990s, and of course, people were speculating about the wonderful things that the internet were going to work long before that. But when I was a student in the 1990s and looking at all the websites that were being developed, I was just amazed at just to think, do you know somebody's going to make a website that will actually have movie times, and you'll be able to see the movie listings, and you'll actually maybe even be able to buy movie tickets on the internet. And so it was like that. I mean, you'd laugh at the sorts of things that we were saying, and the really dramatic differences. I'm not sure that I was quite clued into that. I don't know when I would have been able to start conceiving of something like Wikipedia, even, let alone smartphones and the apps that run on them, and blockchain, and now
that's the next thing, eh?
AI, and genetic engineering, nanotech, and who knows what. We can sort of like, AI was actually a thing, and so is genetic engineering, a thing to speculate about. I remember back when I was a grad student, and some of that stuff is now actually coming to fruition. At least, my dad recently, although I kind of regret it, because that means that our genetic information is out there. Sure. And I don't know. I'm worried about the privacy implications. But anyway, yeah. So now we know that we are just as white bread as we thought, at least on his side. Like he's 45% English. So yeah, yeah. Sanger. I think the Sangers that I am spawned from came from England, actually, as it happens.
Yeah, sure. Probably on the boat from Columbus all the way over all those years ago.
No, it's a little later than that, I think.
Yeah, probably.
Anyway, yeah, but the point is, it's very difficult for us to know what life is going to be like.
That's the exciting part of it, right? That's the cool part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, we've pretty much done an hour, and we've covered loads of cool stuff. Like, we started off with Wikipedia, talking about Everipedia, and now we went a bit like more philosophical. And is there anything else you want to add? Like, is there anything in the roadmap which you just want to specifically tell the community about what's coming up with Everipedia?
Okay, well, a couple of things. I'm working on a declaration of digital independence. I'm going to ask your listeners to sign that when it's available.
I'll link it in the description. I'll put it in there.
Yeah, well, I don't. It isn't out yet. I haven't even shared it with anybody, because I actually want it to be collaboratively written, and I want to get some really smart, famous people involved. And
we'll do an article on the EOSwriter, because that would create a good community.
That would be great. But the other thing is, go to the website now. You can, and you don't have to spend a lot of time right now, unless you want to, and if it catches your interest, absolutely. I want you to do this. Just go to everpedia.org and make an account with, if you've got Scatter and you can handle EOS and so forth, then cool, do it that way. But if you want, you can just make it easy on yourself and log in with Twitter or something, and work on an article, and then come back in about a month, 2 months at the most, and look at how it changed.
Do a screenshot or something, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're going to be happy. I've been monitoring and giving some feedback and ideas to the front end development team, who are really good.
Mm,
Um, and so I'm really excited about what I've been seeing coming from them. And I mean, if my personal dreams are fulfilled, then it will be easier to work on than any wiki ever has been.
that's insane.
And
Yeah.
it's actually going to be a big deal, right? Because not only will it be the easiest wiki to edit, you'll be able to edit all of the Wikipedia articles on it, and you'll be able to make IQ doing so, right? And
That's
yeah, so
the
I think
that's
it's
it's
neat.
super excited. Yeah, I've followed the like it's just everything. You know, Everipedia is everything the blockchain can bring. So it's like the perfect project. And obviously you've got yourself, you've got a great team. I think you got who's the guy called Sam. I
Sam
think
Kazmian.
yeah,
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 that's it. Yeah, I met him at the London Hackathon, and he's like really cool, insightful guy as
yeah,
well. So I
yeah,
can't really imagine your project not being successful, in my opinion.
yeah.
I think it's going to be great, and and also everyone I speak to always knows that the efficiency of Wikipedia. There's such an easy way to decentralize that with EOS. So I'm super
Yeah.
excited about it. Yeah, man, I love it. But yeah, but
Good.
that's pretty much it. Anyway, like we've pretty much done an hour. Just want to say massive thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go on.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, yeah.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if you're watching from the EOSwriter, yeah, like I always say, like, subscribe, hit the bell to keep getting this kind of content from us. You get a notification for that. We get great people on like this all the time, and yeah, you know, thanks for watching, guys. Larry Sanger's with us, and we'll get you on again, Larry. Maybe a few months down the line, do like another podcast. Just I think you're a good person just to have a general conversation about, as well as having a conversation about more the specifics of Everipedia. Maybe you could just have like more of an open chat about stuff, which would be cool to get you on.
Sure. Well, good luck with the new channel. I think it's I like to support them as I can. So, yeah.
Sure thing. Well, thanks again. We'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good day. Bye.
All right. So long.